I think that there's a real opportunity from a West London perspective to utilise Earls Court as a catalyst to be, kind of a driver of creative industry and cultural activity in West London as part of that broader kind of scene. This kind of responds to policy drivers, so the Mayor's Growth Plan identified cultural and creative industries as well as the experiential economy as like key drivers for London's growth. The government recently released the Creative Industries Sector Plan, identified the importance of the creative industries to the UK's growth, the UK's economy. I think it's worth like £135 billion and £60 billion in GDA to London. And I think there's a real opportunity with the scale of Earls Court for us to play a big role in that.
Hello, welcome to Talking Place, the podcast bringing placemakers and storytellers together to talk about place. I'm your host, Tanisha Raffiuddin. I am the founder of Concept Culture, a creative agency in London, passionate about creating purposeful brands and telling powerful stories. In this episode, it is my absolute pleasure to talk place with Tom Branton. Tom Branton is the development director at the Earls Court Development Company, where he leads the cultural strategy with a proven track record of delivering cultural venues across London. Tom has led a variety of high-profile projects both in London and Southeast Asia, with a focus on mixed-use, residential, and cultural developments. He also serves on the Hammersmith and Fulham Cultural Compact, where he plays a key role in guiding the delivery of the borough's cultural strategy. Tom is a member of the NLA's expert panel for culture as well as Business London's Cultural Council, which advocates the importance of culture and the creative industries in London's growth. We cover a lot of ground in this episode around how the Earls Court redevelopment aims to discover wonder and set a benchmark for culture-led urban transformation by honouring its cultural past and creating a new destination for London. Building trust with existing communities and future residents through meaningful stakeholder engagement, and the realities of delivering large-scale development, long-term impact, and leaving a lasting legacy. This episode is packed with insights on how cities can be reimagined with creativity, care, and community at their core. So please do stick around till the end. All right, let's talk place. Tom, welcome to the Talking Place podcast.
Hi Tanisha, thanks for having me and welcome to Earls Court.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting us and for showing us around. It's truly looking like a very visionary master plan, and I'm sure we're going to get into it. But let's start with your journey. So you've been in development for a number of years now, and you've worked both in the public and private sector. Tell us about your journey into development and now your keen interest in culture in development.
So my career, my first job actually was at Southwark Council, and I worked as the deputy leader, and after a year there were a series of projects in the council that weren't quite progressing as people wanted. One of them was, at the time it was called Potter's Fields, which is now called One Tower Bridge. At the time it was something where the council and the developer were not able to make any progress. I got involved with the chief executive and others, and through a process of negotiation and kind of rolling our sleeves up, we got the developer to come back to the table, agree a new plan that the council supported, which ultimately led to the Bridge Theatre that you see today.
Yes, I love it. I love the theatre, yeah.
So
yeah. Well, do we have you to thank for that?
Not me personally for that space. Definitely, I think the part that I played back then was to secure the ability to have that space. So the original scheme didn't have a kind of singular moment of culture. It had culture dispersed across the proposal. So we created a revised brief that allowed for a much more significant cultural space. The idea was to finish off the South Bank string of cultural pearls with this moment by Tower Bridge, and that was the strategy. So that's how I got into property and real estate, and it began with an ambition around culture, securing the South Bank's cultural legacy. I quickly moved from that to the next challenging project at Southwark Council, which was the Elephant and Castle regeneration. So on that, we reformed the same team, and essentially we reviewed the proposals and came up with a pragmatic way of being able to allow that development to come forwards. And ultimately the development agreement was signed, and then I moved across to work for Lendlease.
And you've also worked abroad. You've worked in Southeast Asia. So how has your time working in Southeast Asia influenced your work here in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, that was like an amazing privilege, and I look back on it very fondly. I met my wife there, we got married there, and our son Joshua was born there. So I had the full Malaysian experience. So we lived in the heart of Kuala Lumpur. We lived in tall buildings in the centre of the city, and we enjoyed all the things that living in that way brings to you in terms of opportunity, amazing views, proximity to the city centre, cultural life in close proximity to your home, and then obviously the amenity and the facilities that come with those kind of schemes in Southeast Asia. So that experience really taught me about not only the diversity of Southeast Asia, but the diversity of different real estate markets, and how you really need to get to grips with and understand the intricacies of each market to create things that respond accordingly. And ultimately, living in Malaysia, you can't leave there without a love of the food and the food culture.
Absolutely,
So you get all that stuff, and bringing that back. The one thing I'd love to bring back is the way in which food across Southeast Asia is so much more accessible, something that brings everyone together in different ways. And I think that's partly about price point, that's partly about the culture of going out to eat rather than eating at home. And also I think it's a culture where young people stay at home with their family until they get married, right? So they want to go out because they want to be with their friends.
Absolutely.
That experience brought me personally amazing moments, and professionally understanding the diversity of markets. And back to the UK, back to London, I think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from Southeast Asia around tall buildings, integrating it with extensive infrastructure, and what that does in terms of just bringing a scale of people to a development, whether that's to live or work or socialise, and the diversity and vibrancy that brings. Safety, security, the vibrancy of the retail offer, as well as the place. And I think that's something that, whether it's Kuala Lumpur, Hong Kong, Bangkok, Singapore, they do that very well.
You're speaking to my heart now, particularly when you're talking about food. As someone whose Asian food is very much part of our everyday. And to your point about where young people hang out, definitely growing up in Mumbai, we hung out a lot in the malls and in the food courts. It was just what we did. And then now when I moved to the UK, wasn't so much of a food court culture, but now that's happening now.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that in Earls Market and this market hall culture, which is just fabulous to see. So it's really nice to integrate global things you learn or things you see from abroad into a more UK context. So a question I ask everyone on this podcast is, what does place mean to you?
I think for me, place is about a feeling and an emotion. Ultimately, it's somewhere that you want to come back to again and again, something that may have meaning in terms of a memory, and something that evokes the senses. So I have very clear understanding of what Brixton looks like, smells like, sounds like. The same with Camden, and the same with the West End when you come out of Leicester Square. Those kind of places, equally overseas, they kind of evoke that sense of kind of making the senses zing and hiss and fizzle, which makes you want to go back. And even Camden, that has grown in popularity over the years, but still you're drawn back to the density of people, the sounds, the sights, the smells of that as a place. And for me, a lot of these neighbourhoods, a lot of these areas, that is something that they're really successful at, and that's not just turned on overnight, and that's not just delivered through large-scale mixed-use urban development like we do. So I'm always curious to think about ways in which we can introduce that sense of emotion into our development proposals for Earls Court, so you have that same sense of authenticity of a place that is embedded within its community, but offers something that's different. And that's not easy. I'm not saying I have the answers, but we're definitely very curious to go on that journey and try and see what we can do.
Yeah, I like what you said about this hiss and fizzle and the sounds, and you're right, associate places with certain feelings and emotions, and ultimately how a place makes you feel is it's different for different people. Now tell me, which is your favorite place in the world?
Well, because so many memories happen there, I think Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur in particular, is up there for me. And it's up there for me because of being thrown into something that was so different. I went there and I just thought it'd be like Hong Kong and Singapore, and it was just very, very different. It's a very real place. Malaysian people are very open and welcoming and friendly. The culture is very open and welcoming as well. And there's just I think the thing that's really interesting is just that what you get from the mix of culture there. You have the Malay, Indian and Chinese populations that together kind of have this diaspora that creates something that's really energizing. So for me, that is a favourite place, and we love to go back as often as we can to Malaysia, to Kuala Lumpur, and every time we go back, we go and explore somewhere else and find somewhere new to visit. But we always have those favourite little food haunts that we have to go back every single time because, it's like what I said about the emotion of place and a great place. You go back to those places that give you those memories and, was it as good as last time? Is it as good as I remember it?
I have been to KL as well. My sister got married a couple of years ago in Bali, and on the back of that trip, we visited Singapore and Kuala Lumpur. And what I found fascinating is the number of Malaysians who commuted to Singapore to work, so get the Singapore salary and then live in a different way. I don't want to dare say better across the border, but the food, oh gosh, and the roti. All right, let's get down to business. So we're here at Earls Court Development, and you kindly showed us around. So for those out there who are listening and who are not familiar with the Earls Court Development Company, how would you describe the vision of this project in your own words?
So the vision for Earls Court is all about creating a new part of London that connects to its existing communities. It's an amazing site with such a richness in terms of its history, the legacy of what was here before, the exhibition centres which were demolished 10 years ago, but going all the way back to mid-1800s, the mountain divided the land. This part of London was farmers' fields and cabbage patches, but the railways created this showground for innovation, which the first thing that came to benefit from that was Buffalo Bill's Wild West show and the Americas exhibition. And that started off this legacy and history of showmanship, innovation and exhibitions that then followed through. So it was where London and England came to see the world. The India exhibition was here. Buffalo Bill's show was the first thing that Queen Victoria came to see after she came out of mourning for Prince Albert. And since then, in the 1930s, this beautiful Art Deco exhibition hall was built by Charles Howard Crane. And then it became known for the car show, the motor show, the boat show, Ideal Home show. And then it became known as a place for music. And the legends played here. You had David Bowie was the first rock concert that played here, I think in 73, and it was chaos because you'd never had a rock concert at Earls Court and it wasn't set up for it. But then the legends came like Queen, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, all the way through to Oasis and the Spice Girls and the Brit Awards. So all these memories happened here, and our vision for Earls Court is to build on that legacy, build on that history with a proposition that creates new memories, creates a new destination, but ultimately that offers that sense of place, which I just talked about, in terms of a mix of homes, a mix of workspace, a mix of places to eat, shop, drink, and venues. So it does feel like a real part of West London, and it does feel connected in a way it never has been. You always needed to buy a ticket to come here after the railways divided up the land. So, our vision is really about creating that place that kind of welcomes in West London and connects with West London and the surrounding communities in Hammersmith and Fulham and Kensington and Chelsea, but also because of the scale and nature of the site and because of the history of the site and the location, that will bring the world as well in terms of the next new thing or the latest innovations around digital or tech or the creative industries.
I'm really nervous about our quiz later now. But tell me, what attracted you personally to this role and to the site?
I mean, to be totally honest, the job that I was doing before this was as Director of Regeneration at Lambeth. In that job, where you are across a borough that has 350,000 people, basically is everything from Waterloo, the South Bank, Vauxhall, Brixton, Clapham, Tulse Hill, West Norwood, and everything in between. I kind of realised that there aren't really going to be much better jobs in the public sector than this in terms of that diversity of what you are leading and working on. It was a role where I had a big team and big projects, various things at different stages of development, so it was very interesting. So I come to the realisation that perhaps the next step was something different, the opportunity to come here and the complexity of the scheme, the stage of the project, and the ability to bring all of those things that I'd learned across my career together and bring it to a team in which was trying to push themselves forward and build in a way that build in the lessons, but we could use that as a platform to move forwards. That for me was kind of the key opportunity. And then the other thing was just like, being able to work in a different part of London and such an iconic part.
No, absolutely. I think you have a very envious job. I'm not going to lie. So when we visit the Earls Court Development Company's website, the first thing that we see is the tagline, Discover Wonder. So what does that mean to you?
We started this process 4 years ago. The world was in lockdown and people weren't able to go out. They didn't have green spaces to enjoy, around this area. There's a real lack of green spaces to enjoy and kick a ball. And there was a real sense of loss, in reflecting on what was here 10 years ago, and the exhibition centres moving on, had a big impact on the local economy. There's businesses here that still remember when so-and-so show used to come, and there's still people that used to come to various shows that still come here to have a reunion, like you get the Troubadour, and they get people coming all the time who used to come and do the Ideal Home show or the book show or the motor show, and they come back to the Troubadour because every year they do the same thing. But now they're just doing the exhibition in Excel. This sense of wonder and this loss of what was wondrous in terms of the exhibition centres and the past and the history that it brought was something that very much came out of that process of consultation. Throughout that process, it was more like a clarion call. It was bring back the wonder. So there was a sense of we want to bring that wonder back. And that has been something which has helped shape our plans around opening the site up. We've basically brought 950,000 people to enjoy the site under our ownership in various things, whether it's Paddle Social Club, whether it's Come Alive, the Greatest Showman Circus Spectacular, or the BBC Earth Experience. So bring back the wonder then naturally kind of became Discover Wonder, because it's about bringing people to share in that sense of wonder with you. And it could just be that beautiful cup of coffee in that artisan coffee shop in the future development where you have a coffee on a Saturday morning with your wife or your kids. There's a sense of wonder in that moment. It could be the first time you come and see a show in our venues and the sense of wonder that brings you. And it could be the sense of wonder in the place in terms of what we will deliver. And it has informed the architecture, the design. We've pushed our designers to kind of think differently about design as well from a built environment perspective.
I thought it was really beautiful, and I was very curious, obviously, because I'm all about the place story and place branding, and I think it's very strong, very much leads into the attractiveness and the vibrancy that you were envisioning to bring into this new place.
I think it sets the bar high.
Absolutely.
For us. It's something that kind of, one of the things that I'm responsible for is creative, cultural, retail, F&B, the whole ground plane experience. And so for me, having that as a kind of vision is something that makes me want to strive harder, makes me think about how we kind of bring the right people, the right partners with us to kind of deliver that vision in the place. So it's a challenge to the team as well.
And we all need more wonder in our lives, especially now in 2025. All right, so let's talk about culture. It's a subject very close to my heart, as I understand it's yours as well. So your 4 development place pillars are nature, innovation, neighbourhood, and culture. And you've embedded culture into your schemes. I've also noticed that there's a creative boulevard on the master plan, which is going to be longer than Regent Street. So tell us, why is cultural programming such a priority for this new place?
I think building on all the points I've described, the history, the legacy of the site, I think, the way in which it's allowed us to bring the public in and experience the site in different ways, create new memories. There's a lot of people who, A, they don't realise the exhibition centre's been built, or B, never even went there in the first place. So a lot of people don't have that memory of the exhibition centres. So, building and embedding culture in from day one is about kind of bringing that new sense of perspective and experience for people to engage with the site. But also I think it's really important because, I'm very conscious of places and schemes where, culture gets added on, a box gets created, here's this thing, here's that thing. And all the things that I've just said around, authentic West London creativity, all of that, we can't do that by just bolting a box on. We have to do that by engaging with culture from the outset, from the bottom up. We're really lucky in terms of the fact that this is a very cultural part of the world. 10 minutes down that way, you've got, Exhibition Road with all the great cultural riches that you have there. that direction you've got Lambda, which is an amazing music and dramatic arts school, and you've got the Lyric in Hammersmith. We are kind of in this rich cultural neighbourhood, with even Olympia up the road, which is kind of bringing forward a new theatre and a new music venue. So we're trying to figure out our way within that mix and how Earls Court fits within that framework, but trying to do it so it's part of the DNA from day one. So we have 33 creative studios on Empress Place where people can make a podcast. There's pottery wheels in there, there's artists in there, designers. I've talked about our Artists in Residence program, and we have partnerships with the Young Lyric as well as with Lambda, as well as then our tenants on site. I kind of think there's a really interesting dynamic that's happened across London with a shift to the east, Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, the East Bank, here east. A lot of cultural infrastructure, a lot of cultural development has happened and has moved in that direction. And I think that there's a real opportunity from a West London perspective to utilise Earls Court as a catalyst to be, kind of a driver of creative industry and cultural activity in West London as part of that broader kind of scene. And, this kind of responds to policy drivers, so the Mayor's Growth Plan identified cultural and creative industries as well as the experiential economy as like key drivers for London's growth. The government recently released the Creative Industries Sector Plan.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Which also identified the importance of the creative industries to the UK's growth, the UK's economy. I think it's worth like £135 billion and £60 billion in GVA to London. And I think there's a real opportunity with the scale of Earls Court for us to play a big role in that. And so whether it's the venues, whether it's the kind of the boulevard that we talked about, which is the length of Regent Street from Lily Road up to North End Road, or whether it's about the workspace. And, again, these are things that we are curious about and very interested in kind of exploring. We kind of are part of various partnership groups to help inform our thinking. We have been having a series of roundtables, and we also have the benefit of having, a number of fantastic operators on site that we can just talk to, right? So being able to go and talk to the producers of Come Alive, The Greatest Showman Experience, or being able to talk to the proprietor of the Lost Estate, the immersive dining theatre experience, even going and talking to the guys that run Paddle Social Club on site, having that proximity to be able to just say, does this work? What would work? What would you need? Is like a really important tool to help validate what we're saying. I'm very mindful, certainly throughout my career, the experiences that I've had where people will say, this is a box for culture and we'll sort it out later.
Yeah.
We've gone about it the other way around, and we have analysed to the nth degree how different cultural modes work within our venues, and then how we can think about plugging in all the different things that you need for cultural and creative life that go alongside that. And, with a long-term vision and project like this, the one thing that we have is the luxury of time to think about these things and to nurture the thinking, to nurture the partnerships and create the opportunity for those things to become real important elements of the development.
Oh, I love what you said, you have the luxury of time. So can you share maybe an example of where you have seen culture helping shift public perception or help unlock progress in a project?
Very clearly, when I was at Lambeth, one of the projects that I led was Brixton House Theatre, and that, in essence, is a brand new home. It's been operating for 2 or 3 years now, which is in the heart of Brixton, just through Brixton Village to the back there, close to Somerleyton Road. And that, in essence, gave Oval House Theatre a new home, and that was like a famous production house where they create plays that go to the West End. And from a perception perspective, it was all about regenerating that part of Brixton, which hadn't had the same attention as, say, the High Street and the market. And it was all about providing a home and a showcase that reflects the culture of Brixton as well. Obviously, it's hugely diverse, and home to the Windrush generation and Black cultural archives, all those things. And so this was an opportunity to create, a theatre that would then allow for those communities to have somewhere where they could create and see shows that reflected their lives, their stories, and their experiences. And the really interesting thing that we did was we incorporated a number of, you had the theatre spaces, and then you had commercial uses alongside it. So the Academy of Contemporary Music was one of the operators. There was a digital operator in there, and it was like a mini ecosystem, and that then was a kickstarter to the broader regeneration of Somerleyton Road, where you have the estates going up there. So that very much was and is a visible change in perception of a part of Brixton that was, unloved, slightly forgotten. There were kind of questionable buildings with questionable activities, that kind of thing. And, ultimately it's become a huge community resource that, revitalised that part of the area.
I mean, I certainly remember when I first moved to London, people telling me, don't go to Brixton, you'll get mugged. But now it's happening. It's, you can go and spend a wonderful time in Brixton without having to watch your pocket. So that's a really, really cool example. So do you see cultural placemaking as a delivery tool, as a brand building tool, a public perception changing tool, or something else entirely?
I mean, I think you can see examples of places where they have, done either one of those things. I think the interesting thing now is the way in which, people demand more from places. So people, want more experiences, they want more ways to interact with places, whether that's the shops or the cultural venue, and, shops increasingly are cultural. I'll digress, but we went to Shenzhen recently and they had this amazing futuristic Blade Runner style mall with a kind of Selfridges style department store. And within this department store, there were like the most amazing kind of artworks where it was just selfie kind of central, and all these young Chinese teenagers were there with all these Instagram moments. And that was just culturally relevant and happening and bringing a whole different audience to this place. So I think, to go back to your question, I think there are places that tick those boxes, but I think to create what we want to create here in terms of the neighbourhood and kind of the connection with the community and building on the legacy, it has to be embedded within everything that we do. And it's really difficult because there's no, I can tell you now, there isn't one consultant who can give you the answer to all of this. There isn't one operator.
That's interesting.
It's tough.
Love it.
And it takes... I think you need to explore it. I think you need to engage. I think you need to, there's the commercial kind of operators, there's the kind of subsidized operators, there's the community angle, there's a business angle. So yeah, I think it's not easy. And yes, there's great examples of places where you can go to see this or that show or this or that thing, but how we kind of create a creative cultural neighborhood that people want to spend time in. Shoreditch, we were both at South by Southwest London recently.
Yes.
The Truman Brewery and Shoreditch Town Hall, and that whole vibe there was like you were in the town hall and then you were in the Truman Brewery, and as you're walking along, you've got that whole kind of experience of East London and what's going on with all the little pop-up art galleries or the bars or the cafes. And again, that is like natural evolution, right? That's not a developer that's come in and dropped those good things in.
Yeah, that's true.
So Rich Mix, you think of that, which was one of the venues. I mean, it's a great, massively diverse venue, offering a really diverse set of programming. But again, that's not a developer that's come in and landed that there. So the challenge is, how do we kind of allow the opportunity for that to happen and create the kind of environment in which those things that people want to experience that are different and real can happen.
I want to touch up on the point you mentioned about creative cultural neighborhood. I love how that sounds. Okay, let's imagine in a world we don't have the current constraints that we have. You had a blank slate, money was no object. You had, every planning was no object. How would you go about creating this creative cultural neighborhood?
So I personally have been, on a journey on this project in regards to this element. I was started off in a position where I thought, okay, I can lease these spaces, but how I can create something that's more than the sum of its parts, I don't know. And, I kind of feel slightly more confident about that now, but that's about having the conversations, being curious, going to the places where creative are, going to South by in Austin, being there, meeting people, from the whole spectrum. So I think, ultimately, we need partners to help us deliver it. We need partners who are experts in these, in culture and the creative industries. And I think, engaging with partnerships is a key opportunity for us now to kind of start to build our narrative and our cultural story. And I think we've had a really great approach in terms of engagement with young people and local people in different ways over the 4 years. I think there's an opportunity to move that beyond engagement to more kind of nurturing of cultural talent or creative talent. And again, linking that in with the partnership, we've got this interesting thing where we have a construction skills centre on site. You know, how can that evolve possibly to support that from a skills and talent perspective? So I think partnerships, I think how we kind of work with our communities, I think how we identify talent. I think really what we need community leaders to come, you know, community cultural leaders, especially, I won't name the name, okay. I always find it interesting that we had this music roundtable, and one of the new cultural venues in London is creating a Notting Hill Carnival soundstage.
Okay.
This cultural venue is in central London, and the challenge came back, why aren't you doing that in West London at Earls Court? Because that's music heritage, right there, 10, 15 minutes up the road. And that's a great challenge, and that's a great opportunity. So I think being able to seek out what is unique about West London culture, bring that in, bring partnerships to help work with that, how we can build on our engagement work. Ultimately, I think the other thing that we need is we do need flexibility in terms of the spaces and places that we're trying to create, because we want to make sure that they reflect what will be coming down the line in terms of the operators and the tenants and how that might work. Yeah. I think it's a mixture of all those things, and then putting that into the melting pot and allowing it to prove.
Yeah, no, that sounds cool. I was picturing it as you were talking about it, and I was like, that would be my dream, to live in a creative, cultural neighborhood someday. Well, maybe you'll crack it. We'll see. We'll see. Exactly. Earls Court is where it'll be. So let's talk about delivery. So you've laid out a very ambitious vision. Delivery is where the real grit happens. So what are some of the less glamorous but essential challenges you face in making such large-scale redevelopment actually happen?
Right. I think ultimately we're trying to create a proposition that makes people want to come here. So obviously you're very nervous that people will follow you on that journey from across the range of elements that we have on the scheme. I think obviously there are challenges that the industry is facing right now. We engage a lot with discussions around building regulations, around safety. I definitely think that the industry and our approach has brought a lot of those conversations that you would have had, you know, at REBA Stage 3 or REBA Stage 4, or, you know, when you're tendering for contractors, or even when the contractors, you know, appointed on a design and build contract, they brought a lot of those conversations forward. So I think much more now, the day-to-day of development now is very much engaging with thinking about how you can make sure these buildings are designed to the highest possible standards of safety to achieve the regulations. And it's not just about discovery and wonder, it's about how we create really great buildings that perform at the expected levels. So all of the things that I just talked about from a kind of creative and cultural perspective is kind of like half of what I do, or a third of what I do, and a third of what I do is think about all these technical things about windows and cores and ventilation and these things that, you know, smoke extract, and real technical stuff that you wouldn't really have had to engage with previously. So I do think from a development perspective, the mindset has shifted.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I wouldn't even say it's shifting. I'd say it has shifted from that respect. We have to be much more rigorous in our approach now. And I would even hazard to say, like, we have to understand the requirements of the regulations in just as much detail as our design teams.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Because you just need to know.
So it's not like you can just hire people to solve the problem for you.
I don't think so. No. You need to engage in that conversation. You need to have the same sense of understanding why we're doing like this, why we're doing like that, questioning the team to make sure that we come up with the best and the right and the most optimal solution. So, yeah, absolutely. You kind of, in this world now, you have to engage much more clearly. And actually, interestingly, that brings me back to Malaysia, because in Malaysia what happens is they are more overly concerned with, does your building comply with their regulations? And so what they approve, whilst they approve a planning application in a sense, the focus is really on the building plans themselves. So structure, MEP, services, lifts, everything. So in Malaysia, you actually take the design, and I think across Southeast Asia as well, you actually take the design to quite you take it to stage 4, technical design, and then that gets submitted, that gets approved before you can start to build. And we're pretty much in that world now here. So it's quite interesting when you hear people who find that shift challenging, because a lot of the world already works that way.
Yeah.
And thinks that way. And so I think from a cultural and creative perspective, what it means is, this is why I've gotten into the detail of the specifications of the buildings and understanding the spaces and how many toilets, cloakrooms, changing rooms, air handling units these operators need, because we need to understand at the planning stage that we can have a 450 seat theatre or a 900 capacity standing venue or whatever else it might be, because we have literally, without having an operator on board, we've thought about it. So that is a lot of the nitty-gritty of the deliveries.
And obviously this development is going to take place over a number of years. And so how do you balance the long-term stewardship with the short-term expectations from the many partners you talked about, politicians, or even the public and the local community?
I think it's tough.
I didn't expect you to say it was easy.
I think everyone thinks it can happen just like that. You know, I think from a community perspective, I think the approach that we have taken a real genuine interest in getting to know our community, a conscious decision to live here, work here, base ourselves on site, you know, kind of have a whole host of different ways in which we engage with the community so that we can understand, you know, their fears, their needs, their wants, but also that they can, you know, start to build that trust. And obviously trust is, you know, a critical thing in delivering development, and it's also quite fragile, I would say, amongst the different parties. Yeah. I think, you know, from a stakeholder perspective, I do, you know, reflect on the fact that, you know, having the wherewithal of having done this a few times before, a few different locations, you know, you do get to the point where you have perspective and, you know, kind of communicating that perspective, being able to provide assurance, you know, by giving the sense of, you know, this is how it happens, it will be like this. And ultimately it's about proof of delivery. So I always remember one of my first projects, which was basically delivering the first phase of the regeneration of a major scheme. And no one believed us. No one believed what we said in terms of the quality of what we deliver until we opened the doors and handed over the first development, which was also my first project. Yeah. And as soon as we opened the doors, everyone came and walked around it and they thought it was fantastic. It was great for the community and the homes were really great quality and it was really well designed and stitched in with the community. There were green spaces and trees and, you know, even today it still looks fantastic. You know, and it ultimately was shortlisted for the Sterling Prize as well. So from a design quality perspective, there is that sense of, you know, people needing to see the proof in the pudding.
Yeah. And what was the name of that project?
So that was Trafalgar Place, which was the first scheme that was delivered at the Elephant and Castle regeneration. I spent late nights worrying about that one.
Just building on what you said about no one believed us. So at South by Southwest, I attended the talk with S. Fabregas and what they're doing at the club in Lake Como and with the Indonesian investor. And it's fascinating because there's like, so it is the investor, developer saying, like, you know, who are these foreigners coming? And like, nobody believed in what they were going to do. And then they brought in Cesc Fabregas. Once the football club started winning, people started believing. And then they were more convinced and trusting of the developer. So it just, what you said just reminded me of that point. Like, you have to get the community to believe. And once they believe you, because now they're like, the community is completely backing them, you know, even helping them with repairs and stuff in the stadium and things like that. So, you know, you want to be on the winning side. Everybody wants to be on the winning side, don't they? On that point of the community, I reflected on the 4-year-long consultation. So for others listening out there, what have been some of your most valuable learnings from that process and managing a consultation of this scale?
I think we've tried multiple different approaches, some of them more successful than others. Definitely, I think the thing that we recognise has been incredibly successful has been the Public Realm Inclusivity Panel.
Oh, wow.
And this is something that we have worked in partnership with ZCD Architects, so Dinah Bornett, who is a leading light in designing for children and play space for children. She wrote the GLA guidance on it, and I worked with Dinah on Aberfeldy, which is fantastic. And basically, we brought together the Public Realm Inclusivity Panel, or PRIP for short, is a group of diverse people from different backgrounds, all local. You have young people, older people, people with different abilities, seen disabilities, hidden disabilities, different life experiences, and they were brought together and Still happening now. And I think 25 or 30 sessions they've had, they kind of get paid for their time, they do little study tours. But basically, it's been a group that has critiqued the master plan. And from the early days, from the outset, right through to now, it's been a group that we've tested things with. We bring the architects and put them in front of this group of people. We take them to see things that we think is great. And they tell the architects, that's completely ridiculous. Why didn't it like that? Why is it like this? We're not going to go there. We're not going to do this. Or you take them to see something that you think is fantastic.
And what are the architects' reaction when that happens?
They've all been pretty gracious, to be fair. They've all been pretty
great.
gracious. And Tommy, our public realm landscape designer, he's really embraced it, and he's really brought them in onto the inside of the process. And definitely, I can genuinely say that the public realm, the landscape has been designed very much in collaboration with that group. And they've also moved into different areas. So we've worked with them on how you design for safety, and there's a toolkit for how you design for that to make places feel safe and secure. We've brought our retail team in and talked to them about what places would you like to see here. There's a perennial conversation in that respect about new communities, existing communities, and then new shops, new retail, and how you manage people's expectations. But it's quite interesting. At the end of the day, people like nice things. They like a nice cake, they like a nice coffee, they like somewhere to go for a decent pizza, and that's pretty ubiquitous. So they've been really, really great, and there's lots of publications that we've published around that, and there's a toolkit that we have published around design for safety.
And where can people find this toolkit?
They can find it on earlscourt.com, and the links will be on there, along with the links to our plan application and links to comment on the plan application, should you wish.
And people can still do that?
They can, it's still live.
Okay.
So it was submitted a year ago, and we're now just responding to comments and resubmitting, tidying things up. So I think that has been an experience and a process which has been really valuable, and you've seen people change through that process. You've seen young people come in who were like a little kind of meek and mild, and come out and they're like all kind of out there and projecting and leading, and you see kind of older people who maybe a little bit sheltered and don't necessarily go out and they make new friends and social. So it's been really life affirming as a process.
Oh, wow.
So I think everyone's got as much out of it as they put in. And I think just that thing about taking the time to really get to know your community. There's one of our local residents who, I'll never forget the conversation, and we were talking about the exhibition centres, and we were talking about what used to happen here and how they saw these different things. And she says, do you know what? Everybody who never mentions can never forget the 1995 when 20,000 people were jumping up and down to Oasis singing Roll With It, and the buildings on the street shook and the lifts kind of failed and everything was shaking. Just going back to that sense of place and memory and sense of the different appealing to the senses, there's just that kind of thing that makes these things kind of stick in the mind, right? And that experience, you can't take that away. So,
I mean, I think a lot of our memories all happens in those cultural settings, like the sense of being in a concert with how many ever thousands of people, or going to Glastonbury or going to Tomorrowland. I certainly, after Tomorrowland, 3 days, 4 days, I came back, I was absolutely buzzing, flying. And it was all down to this shared cultural experience. And sometimes it thinks, I don't know, my personal perception is this is so common sense. Why do we need to convince people to invest in it? I don't know. What's your take on that?
I mean, I went to South by Southwest in Austin, and I came with my mind blown. Every day I was buzzing. The conversations I was having, the people that I was meeting, everything from major corporates down to startups, even just the students from the University of Texas. They just have that American confidence about them that it's just so welcoming, and the hospitality and the culture. But definitely just that coming together of minds, creativity, that energy, that buzz, is something you can't bottle up.
Let's talk about legacy now. Obviously, as a steward of the space, and the place will live on even after we have passed. So how do you ensure that the redevelopment will create a legacy that benefits, you've already touched on, the existing and future communities, and not just your investors?
So I think here the great thing that we have is we've got a single site ownership. So the intent is that we control, manage, retain ownership of the public realm and all of the retail ground floor elements. So that single ownership allows us to curate, manage, operate the estate for the benefit of the community. I think there's work to be done on the models of how we deliver that, but I think that is the key model in terms of how we deliver that ongoing legacy. I think beyond that, it's about creating different housing typologies that appeal to different people and allow for different types of people to live here for all stages of life. And, additionally, workspace that's resilient, that doesn't need knocking down in 20, 30 years, that has the ability to flex and the ability to change and be reconfigured to respond to changing markets. Have the partners that are embedded within that master plan to take it forward and have that long-term approach as well. So, there's a lot to be done, and we're at the start of the journey, but very much I think we have the framework to ensure that can happen.
So what are some of the wider trends that you're seeing in urban development, and are we moving in the right direction as an industry?
I think for me globally, there's great examples, Southeast Asia that we've talked about, and I do think there's a lot of opportunity there, just seeing what comes of large-scale infrastructure investment with significant development, creating a density of people that makes places thriving and vibrant. Closer to home, I think, obviously, there's much more of a focus on well-being, I think. It's coming back to that kind of challenge around what people are expecting from new places, whether it's green space, over half of our site publicly accessible space, whether it's kind of prioritising pedestrians and cyclists. That is something that in London we do very well. Kind of designing for people, humans, whether it's nature, cycling, walking, shops, design at a human scale, all those things are true and still remain true, and they are places that people want to live, and that they are things that are very much embedded in what we're doing at Earls Court. Similarly, kind of from a sustainability perspective, it's interesting because there's always that challenge and debate about the value of sustainability versus the cost. And as an industry, we still don't articulate the benefit of it in the way that consumers understand, as in the impact on household bills, as in the impact on your own kind of sustainability score, for example. So I think there's more that can be done there, and along with that becomes definitely in London and the UK an increasing trend towards diversity of housing typologies. No longer is it single tenure, affordable, and market sale. Places are increasingly market sale, multifamily housing, student housing, senior housing, co-living, hotel.
Intergenerational.
Exactly, right? Maybe there's something there that comes full circle in terms of like the multi-generational kind of family housing that you get in Asia, right?
Yes, absolutely. To that point, I think because we're bonding so much on our Asian connection, but here they call it intergenerational living or multi-generational living, and in Asia it's just living.
Exactly. I hope, no doubt, as the baby boomers grow up and the kind of younger generation increasingly rely on them for help to get on the ladder, maybe there is a solution there in which we can design typologies for them to kind of come back together and thrive.
Absolutely. I echo that sentiment. So if you could wave a magic wand and fix one systemic issue, I know there are many, in development, be it policy or funding, what would it be?
As you say, there are many. And I think a lot of positive change has been announced and is happening. The fact that government is listening to the industry. And I think now it's quite interesting to see how momentum builds around certain elements that need addressing, whether it's planning, whether it's building regulations, whether it's affordable housing. And now there are increasing stories about demand. And I think that we do need to look at how we ensure that we're providing the right types of homes for the demand and the need that is out there. And in some cases that could kind of mean some kind of support program. So there's things like that we can look at, and I'm sure there's more creative ways, but I think it's really welcome that the industry has been listened to, and I think for a long time maybe we haven't felt listened to.
So we want the government to listen to us more. That's the long and short of it. So now let's do some future gazing. Obviously this is going to be a long-term development, but let's zoom into maybe the next 5 or 10 years. What do the next 5 to 10 years look like for the Earls Court development?
So we're going to get planning.
Yes, number one.
We're going to bring on partners, and we're going to start construction, and in 5 years' time we will be opening homes and welcoming our residents in. We'll be opening shops and welcoming our retailers in. We'll be opening workspace, hotel and gyms and wellness and food stores and our park. Our first phase for sure will be ready and we'll be creating a place that is really ambitious. And I think one of the things that we've done is we've sort of kind of maximise the amount of different uses in the first phase so that we can bring them together and allow the park, the public realm, to be delivered as part of that first phase, which is a huge investment. Really from day one, the kind of key signature piece of the place, the public realm, is kind of delivered. So that very much is what we're focused on, and that very much is our target and our ambition and what we're all aiming for. I think that in 5 years' time, come back and see us in between, but definitely 5 years' time it will be open for business.
Amazing. We've spent how many ever minutes having this conversation and not once talked about AI.
No?
Yeah. AI and the rapid expansion of AI having an impact of the work that you're doing here?
Not yet,
okay.
I think is the honest answer. I think there's huge opportunity and huge opportunity going forward. So we have a working group where we're bringing experts that we work with as well as ourselves internally to look at. We have had a few little forays into AI. We've not quite found the right way forwards yet. Digitally, it's a master plan that's designed in 3D, everything's talking to each other, so from a digital perspective, the infrastructure's there. But from an AI perspective, I think, for sure, it's going to revolutionise the way that we, I think, market, sell, lease the spaces and the places. I was having this inspirational conversation this morning about how there's an AI program that basically scrapes social media and social channels, finds out what people are looking for, and then relates experiences to those people. And in one case has had a 35% uplift on ticket sales through directly connecting people who are looking for things to do in the West End.
Yes.
And then aligning experiences, shows,
yes,
with what they're looking for. And like literally pushing it and saying, here's a micro-influencer, and connect the micro-influencer to these people and these channels in these forums, and that's driving ticket sales. And that's just one conversation this morning. And you can see how the world of property would embrace that and how that could be the same, whether it's leasing shops, leasing offices, selling apartments, renting apartments, and a whole host of other ways in which we will be affected. So I think it's a huge opportunity and we've tried a few ways. I think we've not quite found the right way yet. And I think, again, the fact that we've got ownership of the site, the fact that it's 44 acres, the fact we're at the stage we're at now means that we do have that opportunity, that luxury of time.
Yes, the luxury of time.
To really embed AI within what we're doing and look to leverage it going forward.
So you're not nervous?
No, I think we've got to embrace it.
Yeah, 100%. So, Tom, if you could achieve one big thing through your work here on the Earls Court development, what would it be? What do you want to be remembered for?
I'm hugely passionate about the opportunity to embed the creative industries in what we do. I think there's a massive opportunity for West London and for London in using the scale, the power, the location, the history of Earls Court to catalyse the growth of the creative industries in this part of London, play our part as part of that growth plan that we talked about, not only be a home for experiencing culture, but be a home for making and creating culture and creative industries, whether that's digital, tech, music, film. Increasingly, coming back to the AI point, there's boundaries now that have been crossed between culture, creativity, and the kind of intersection with different industries. I've spoken to people who are working in the music industries, creating sound pipes that connect Nashville and Brooklyn with zero lag. And the defense industry has taken that on because that means that when they're in Washington, they can talk to Baghdad with zero delay, and they can. So the kind of way in which technology is kind of pushing some of these industries and pushing creativity across the board from an industry perspective, I think is huge. And I think that's where we can kind of really capitalise and use Earls Court to kind of drive that forwards.
Oh, and I wish you all the very best. I wish you and the entire team all the very best with that vision, and certainly if we're still here 5-10 years time, we will see that vision come to life. And so, but what's next for you personally, Tom?
Me personally, I think there's continuing kind of curiosity and development of an understanding around what I just talked about from a cultural and creative perspective. There's a real energy in the team to kind of do what we've said we're going to do and to make it happen. There's a lot of people in this office who are sitting there ready to build, ready to pour concrete, ready to sell homes and lease shops. I find that really energizing, and that's the great thing about working in this industry. If you could speak to young people, that's kind of what I'd say. The fact that you've worked on different parts of the capital, that you can then walk around. Even when I go back to Malaysia, like, it's amazingly fulfilling when I go there. And we designed 6 60-story residential towers on top of a 2.5 million square foot mall, and now the mall is thriving and vibrant. There's an amazing Apple store there, there's an amazing Shake Shack, there's people hanging out, there's people hanging out outside, which doesn't necessarily happen in Malaysia because the play space is so cool. So that's the kind of brilliance of this career, is that you really do plan, think, design and deliver, and then go back and see these places, how they evolve over time. So I always love going back to the Elephant. I always love going back to Tower Bridge. It's just really, really life affirming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's also our message out there to the younger people listening. Come join us, be part of development, be part of placemaking. It's your opportunity to leave a stamp on this place, because the place will be here even after we're gone. So that comes to the end of our formal conversation. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your insights and your energy and your enthusiasm on point throughout the whole conversation. So now it's down to the fun part. This is our final segment, and it's called Know Your Neighborhood. And I hope we can stump you, but I don't think we can. So you have conveniently selected Earls Court. I feel like we should have chosen one for you. But anyway, the way it goes is I'm going to state 3 facts, and all you have to do is tell me whether you think they're true or false. The facts have been sourced from the internet. They have not been cross-verified for accuracy, but whatever's on my notes is the final answer. Are we good? All right, let's go. All right. Fact number 1, Earls Court Road is one of London's oldest Roman roads.
False.
That's correct. Wow, you're very confident on that. And why would you say that?
Well, because the Romans were kind of the other end of the city.
Okay, so that's pretty...
That would be my instinct.
No, that's true. So it's not a Roman road at all, but Earls Court Road has evolved over centuries from a rural track to a lively high street. So you know your history of London. Excellent. All right, fact number 2. David Bowie performed his first ever Ziggy Stardust concert in Earls Court.
Well, I hesitate because it's the internet, but it wasn't his first ever, but it was a Ziggy Stardust tour that was performed at Earls Court. False.
Is it true? That's correct, yeah. No, you navigated that well. So while Bowie did perform in Earls Court, and in 1973, as you said earlier, during his Ziggy Stardust era, his first performance as Ziggy took place on the 10th of February in 1972 at the Toby Jug pub in Tolworth, London.
There you go.
So you were right. Excellent. 2 out of 3. See, I knew this. This is just like cakewalk for you. All right, let's see where we get to with fact number 3. So Earls Court was known as Kangaroo Valley in the 1960s.
I think it was, true.
And why do you think so?
We haven't talked about this, but Earls Court was this amazing location where it was the first place where a lot of different communities came to. Essentially, it's the most affordable part of central West London, and it became known as a thriving LGBTQ area. It became known as a thriving area for Aussies and Kiwis and Saffers, and had a real kind of Aussie, Saffron and Kiwi kind of culture about it. So it's definitely all right.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, 3 out of 3. So due to a large number of Australian and New Zealand expats living there, Earls Court earned the nickname Kangaroo Valley, complete with Aussie bars and travel agents. But then why doesn't Upham and Balham have the same Kangaroo Valley moniker? Or maybe they do, we don't know about it.
Good question. I think Earls Court was first.
Earls Court was first. Yeah. That was so much fun. So sadly, that means our time on this podcast has come to an end, but I hope we'll keep talking and keep coming back and seeing all the great work that you're doing here at Earls Court. So all that's left for me to do is to thank you for being part of the Talking Place podcast, and thank you for talking place with me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tanisha. It's really great to have you here.
And we'll talk soon. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to join the conversation on social media with the hashtag #TalkingPlace. I would also love for you to leave our podcast a review and subscribe to all our podcasts and YouTube channels so you don't miss an episode. There's so much more to explore when it comes to creating good places, and I'm excited to do a deep dive into other topics with you in our next episode. I'm Tanisha Raffiuddin, and it's been my pleasure to be your podcast host. Thank you for listening. See you again next time, where we'll continue talking place. Talk soon.